This was a crazy season for the Warriors that just ended in the most unfortunate way, getting eliminated by the Sacramento Kings in the play-in. For this team not to make the playoffs this year, it's pretty shocking. And obviously they had an absolutely crazy year. I hope to get into this more in another video, but just for kind of a quick recap, basically you can sum this season up into kind of a few things. One was the Draymond suspensions, which, maybe if he wasn't suspended, and maybe if the Warriors closed out a few more of those close games, they could have probably been in the 50-win column and been towards the top of the West. But at this point, we will never know that. And it's really unfortunate that Draymond was suspended and missed as many games as he did. The other thing was the death of Warriors assistant coach Dejan Milojevic, also known as Coach Decky. I just can't imagine what his family and what the Warriors organization has had to deal with. And, I want to continue to pray for them just during this time. I know it probably still hasn't been easy. And that was really a big thing that I think kind of rattled this team, midway through this season. But, with the Warriors finishing strong in the season the way they did, I think this kind of, propelled them in a sense. But yeah, the main thing is, like I said, I want to continue to pray for his family and just their organization during all this, because I just can't imagine it's been easy, losing someone of not only that importance to their organization, but someone who, seemed like he was a great family man. And yeah, it's just a really unfortunate situation. And the other thing with this season was Clay and Wiggins' rough start. They didn't have the seasons that they were looking for. Basically, for the first half of the season, Clay and Wiggins just really struggled to shoot the basketball. I mean, that's really what it was in its entirety. And, though they both played better in the second half of the year, you just think about, like I said, all those games, all those close games where if Wiggins or Clay were just, making some of their shots, or, were looking more of themselves from 2022 and 2023, how many more games would the Warriors won? But, we can't think about that now. We can't dwell too much in the past, and we just got to look forward to the future. But the turning point for me tactically during this season was a few games ago in New Orleans, when down the stretch, Steve Kerr decided to play Chris Paul instead of Trayce Jackson-Davis. And this was huge for me because, look, the Warriors just don't have the personnel to play small ball. It just is not going to work anymore. And when you have Chris Paul as the low man trying to help on Zion, it's not going to work. Zion's going to score every time. That's pretty much exactly what happened down the stretch. And it doesn't work anymore because, look, you don't have Shaun Livingston. You don't have Andre Iguodala. You don't have Otto Porter. You don't have Kevin Durant. And, when you have this small of a team that the Warriors have, you're forced in a sense to have guys like Chris Paul, Podziemski, and Curry as the low man, which, let's face it, these guys are great players on the offensive end. And for the most part, they're solid defenders, but they're not going to be able to guard Zion Williamson. They're not going to be able to, tag Domantas Sabonis on the roll, right? These things just can't work. You need more size out there on the court. And time and time again, Steve Kerr continued to play small ball. And I know he played Trayce Jackson-Davis more during the season, but he just played too much small ball. And just the Warriors, they didn't have the personnel to do it. And, looking back in hindsight, yes, we could have played Trayce Jackson-Davis down the stretch of that New Orleans game. And yes, he could have gotten more playing time in the Kings game. But yeah, small ball is good, but we just don't have the personnel for it anymore. And that was definitely a big turning point in the season. And that pretty much showed me that, look, Steve Kerr is not really going away from his philosophies. And if that's how we're going to play, then I don't know how far we're going to advance. And eventually it culminated to, the Warriors losing in the play-in game versus the Kings. And now that's kind of what I want to get into next. So, with the play-in game, immediately, just the lack of rebounding, the lack of closing out to shooters. I mean, Keegan Murray and Keon Ellis just torched the Warriors completely. And I was worried from the start with the fact that Keegan Murray made 3 threes to start that game. But just there was such a lack of urgency from the Warriors, I felt like. Like I said, the lack of rebounding, the ball movement just wasn't there. They weren't really running many sets, it seemed like. Everybody was going iso ball from Steph to Wiggins to Kuminga. And then Clay was 0 of 10, and Steph had a bunch of turnovers. It just wasn't good. I mean, I guess the Kings just caught the Warriors on a bad day. I don't really know what else to say. I mean, obviously things would have been different, like I said, if they had 50 wins and if, they closed out some of those close games and weren't in the play-in to begin with. But, this is part of the play-in tournament, right? It's like a one-and-done type thing. If you don't show up, you're going to get eliminated. And it's unfortunate now because the Warriors are 0-3 all-time in play-in games. So, really, though, this game was kind of a story of the season. It was a culmination of everything that happened, right? From Clay's struggles to Wiggins' struggles, with, Steve Kerr's struggles to find lineup combinations that work, right? With starting Trayce Jackson-Davis in that second half. And, Trayce Jackson-Davis only getting 10 minutes in this game, So, obviously, I have the box score up on the screen right now so you guys can see what I'm referring to a little bit. But yeah, just the rotations, Clay's inconsistencies, Wiggins' inconsistencies, Steph's turnovers, just you can see all of this inconsistency culminating into one game essentially. So that was kind of the big thing that I saw. And so with that, let's kind of go over kind of how I see the future of this team being and where this team's at right now. And really, there's a small window of time left. I mean, Steph is 36 and Draymond is 34. I believe Klay is 34 as well. You have maybe a few years left to compete, and that's about it. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I think for Draymond, this is his last contract. For Klay, if he gets re-signed for this summer, this is going to be his last contract. I was watching a video from Bobby Marks of ESPN. So Steph is also extension eligible. You could extend him for possibly another year or two. So this team has only pretty much a few more years left. And, you know, I hope that Steph gets his 5th ring. That would put him in probably the top 10 echelon of greatest players of all time. But really, like, let's face it. Like, this Warriors team, this is an average basketball team. And they are really not a legit contender. And, you know, they're the most expensive team in basketball. So to not really be a contender and to be an average team, being the most expensive team in basketball, I'll tell you what right now, Joe Lacob is probably not happy. And the rest of the Warriors ownership is probably not happy either. And going out the way they did, you have to imagine that there are going to be big changes in play. But there's also not many changes they can make, and hope to get that into another future video as well. But you know, I don't really want to have to say this because I've had so much hope and I've tried to be as positive as I can about this team. But let's face it, the dynasty might just be over. This might be it of the Warriors dynasty. There's a very low chance of them getting a 5th championship. And could they still get it? Yes. And am I still holding out hope that they possibly could get it? Like how Tim Duncan, you know, got a 5th championship in his, I think 18th season? Yes. You know, I'm still holding out hope that that is possible. But the dynasty as we know it, this team constructed as we know it, I think this is the last of it. And, you know, with what I was saying about this team being average, like, let's face it, 2020, right? Only 15 wins, one of the worst seasons in franchise history. The next year, 2021, they didn't even make the playoffs either. They were just above average, 39-33, lost 2 playing games to the Lakers and the Grizzlies. Then obviously, right, you have the 2022 championship, 53-29, start off the season 19-2. You know, they made the finals on a absolutely magical run, and it was awesome to watch. But then 2023, you know, you have some chemistry issues. Once again, you're back to average. You were pretty much 500, you know, for the whole season. And then the Dubs picked it up, went on a 6-game winning streak, ended up getting the 6th seed. We're 44-38, lost in the second round. But a big thing, right? They were 33-8 at home last year and 11-30 on the road. Not the type of thing you want to see from a championship caliber team. And then this year, man, I already talked about some of the inconsistencies with the, rotations and the small ball and all that. But this team was still better than last year, right? 46-36, 25-16 on the road, which was one of their best road records in franchise history. Although they were 21-20 at home and started the year 19-24, but they finished the season 27-12. They were one of the best teams in the league for the second half of the season, and it still only culminated in them getting the 10th seed. But this is what I mean. Like, let's face it, they've missed the playoffs now 3 out of the past 5 years. And even when they've made the playoffs, right, especially with their 2023 season and when they've made the play-in in 2021 and this year, they were just an average basketball team. And they were really nothing more than an average basketball team. And yes, were they still a threat because of Steph Curry still in his prime and because Klay and Draymond have now been healthy? Yes, of course. The Warriors are always a threat, no matter their seeding or positioning. But let's face it, this team is an average team, and given that there's not too much room for improvement unless they let go of like CP3, GP, Kevon Looney, Klay, right? This team is average, and they probably not are a championship contender. And given that, the dynasty might just be over. Also, though, another thing I want to talk about, in another video is, look, the Warriors' probably number one priority is going to be getting out of the tax, is going to be getting out of that second apron. There's going to be a lot of decisions that have to be made on this team, from Klay Thompson to Chris Paul, from Kevon Looney. I think he could be a free agent too, as well as GP2, either as a player option or team option, I forget. But then Kuminga and Moody, they are also extension eligible. They need extension. So this will be some things to think about. But regardless, this season, as chaotic as it was, the Warriors have a pretty solid young core to build around. And that's why I've continued to make videos on this Warriors young core, because Podziemski, Jackson Davis, Kuminga, Moody, these are guys you can build around. And if the Warriors want to have a sustainable future, keeping the young guys is probably the way to go. But if they keep the young guys, there's not going to be much room for improvement as far as trades go, as far as, salary cap wise, right? Bringing in other veterans. if you keep the young guys, there's not going to be much room for improvement and not much change for this team. And given where this team's at, I would think Joe Lacob wants to make some massive improvements. So we will see. That's kind of my take here of what happened, not only in the New Orleans game, but in the Sacramento game, and kind of a brief outlook of what they might have going for them in the future and this summer. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.